Hi, welcome everyone. It's Roy, and I brought in Isabel today. So, because Val was too busy, I think. No, Val was. We were going to talk about enamels and paints, and she was like, "I've done a little bit with that," but she stepped out just for this particular one. And Isabel, that works here at Delphi, has done a bunch of stuff with color line paints in particular. So
glass line paints.
Oh, I'm sorry, glass line. I was wrong, wasn't I? So I dragged her along. Anyways, so here it is.
Here we are, just ready to dive right into it.
Dive in. So if you have questions, while we're talking or beforehand, feel free to, drop us a message below, or you can always send us, a message on Instagram, Facebook. You can email us at Delphi at.
You can do Facebook at Delphi.
Facebook, I got it wrong. Wow. Facebook at DelphiGlass.com. There you go. So, which one do you want to talk about first? So we brought in, so Delphi currently carries like about 3 different, what we call enamels. So I don't think all of them are technically enamels, but 2 of them are. And you want to talk about glass line first, jump in, or let's talk about the other ones first, because we're going to do, I think, some demonstrations with the glass line. So we carry a couple of different brands here. We carry this one called Color Line, and this is a product that Bullseye Glass imports. I'm not sure exactly what country they come from, but Switzerland. So they're made in Switzerland is what it says on the back. So this is an enamel. Enamels are ground up glass and pigment of some sort. So the advantage to them is that they tend to have more pigment and colorant. So that when you paint with them, they hold their color really well. So as opposed to like using glass powder and mixing that up and painting with that, right? They don't hold their color very well, but these are higher concentration or saturation of pigment, and so they hold up better. The other great advantage to any of these that we're going to talk about is that they're not COE specific. So you can use them on 96 or 90, float glass, whatever. Do you have any comments?
No comments so far.
You're okay.
Sometimes when he just talks, you just got to let him talk, man.
So the color lines, again, come from Bullseye. They have a nice wide range of colors. They are like what they call high fire. So what that means in the enameling world would be, over 1,300 to 1,500. I think the recommendation on this one is like 1,382 to like 1,510 or some kind of interesting number. But for the most part, for most people, they work like in what we would call in the fusing ranges, right? Especially if you're doing a full fuse, anything, around 1,450 or hotter. Contour fuses, they work well for that. To be honest, I haven't really tried. A lot of times with the products that we have, I always like to see how low can I go, right? How low of a temperature.
Yeah, I definitely experimented with the glass line with like, well, how, what are the different effects and how does it affect the shine, and what is kind of the limits I can stretch this to still have it permanent but yield like good results. So.
Yeah, I know on these we did go to their recommendation. Like I said, it's like I think. For some reason, it's like 1,382
it was
or
like
something.
It was like a low end, like 1,310 to about 1,500. But they said if you wanted them to be glossy, then that would be 1,365 and above.
Yeah. So typically, I think it was true with any of these, right? If you're really looking for a glossy, shiny glass-like, you have to go in the higher temperature range of whatever the recommendation is. If you start going lower, it's more of a fat matte finish, which is not really. I mean, it's not horrible, but I guess but be prepared. I guess is. Because we get that a lot of times, when people are asking us and they'll say, oh, I fired this and it's just not as shiny as I thought it was. It's totally temperature. I mean, is really what that is. So
I also found kind of like some differences between the brands. So I find that the Milton Bridge or the Color Line tend to be a little more glossy compared to the glass line. But again, like Roy was saying, it's subject to temperature, right? So maybe if I took the glass line to 1480, it would be the same result as one of these two at like 1390 or something. So you can still achieve and kind of work with them, but each of them are different. So sometimes it takes some experimentation with your kiln and your projects to kind of see how you like them and what they do.
Yeah, you actually hit on you said the difference between them is that I mentioned earlier that they're not all enamels. So like, we get real specific sometimes with the terminology. And the Milton Bridge, which I'll talk about in a second, is also an enamel, but the Color Line is more like a glaze. It actually is manufactured by a company that makes glazes for the ceramic industry. So it's what they call a low fire glaze. But again, for us, their recommendation again is like 1,500 degrees. So pretty hot for us in the fusing world, right? Let me just finish up with some of the color line stuff, only because I wanted to show you guys. So this is what it looks like, right? It comes out like this. They come sealed, so you do have to, which is really nice because they don't dry up so quickly inside the bottle. Now the color line, there's a thinner that goes along that you can purchase along with these, right? And so the thinner is what you use. If it gets a little, dried up in the bottle, you would add the thinner, or if you just want it thinner, right? If you're airbrushing with it, let's say, or painting with it, and you want something that's a thinner consistency, that works. You can add water to them, but adding water to them shortens the shelf life of them. And so the recommendation is that if you were going to add water to this, you would do that in a separate container, or maybe on a pallet, right? We you can't see here, but Isabel and I are using just a piece of glass as a palette as we're messing around with the color. But if you had this little styrofoam plate would work real nice, or if you had a real palette, right? You could just add some water, mix it to that, and again, the recommendation is not to scrape that and put it back into this bottle. There's a residue with the water, I guess, that can also happen, especially if it's been sitting around for a little while. That's what I mean by it kind of shortens the life of it. But otherwise, the tip looks a lot like, let me grab one that's already been opened so you guys can just see what the tip looks like, right? The tip looks like this, so you can see it's pretty good size. So if you're squirting some out, it's going to give you a nice thick line. And I don't know if this is thin enough for me to squirt it out. I have a piece of glass here. This was some other stuff I was playing around with earlier, but if you guys want to see, you just look up. Wouldn't be the first time I broke something around here, but hey, it's not broken, so it's totally fine. Daisy knew that, didn't she?
She did. I'm not gonna tell her.
Okay, don't tell her. So don't tell her I did that. Anyways, well, there you go. I should have checked the bottle before
That's the beautiful thing about these, is we can always unplug them.
Oh,
it's not.
Oh, it's a brand new one. Sorry, it's not even open. Sorry, I thought we had some that were not open.
By your foot, there's some.
Oh yeah.
I just magically found some.
Oh, look at that! Isn't that nice? Thanks, Noah. Oh, yeah, there we go. And you always have to shake them up, right? So I can tell you, all the ones that we're going to be showing you today, you have to shake them all up just as they sit around. Mm-hmm. And they do have a tendency to kind of, dry up a little bit in the containers. So does give you a nice arm workout. But you can see the line of that. Right now, this one is, I should have spent a few more minutes shaking it up. And like the end of the line is really more what you got. It's really watery because, the pigment settles to the bottom and then all the liquid stays on top. And you get something a little bit. But it's like a fairly wide line, I think, right, when we're working with these. Oh, the other thing real quick is, so all of the products we're showing you today don't contain any lead, which is really nice, right? So that's a good, nice, safe thing for us. But because of that, some of the colors in red, the reds in particular, are not always so bright and shiny red like we would expect. The recommendation for a color line is that you vent your kiln while you're running it. For the red in particular, they recommend you vent it all the way up, to even if you put like a little kiln post in, like a 1-inch kiln post, 1/2-inch kiln post even, just so some oxygen can get into the kiln as it's running, because that's the issue, is as the medium, the liquid that's in here burns off, that burning off can kind of affect the color. Again, usually on most of the colors, it doesn't affect it at all, but you might see it on warm colors, but red in particular. So I think they recommend, for all these paints anyways, to vent them to 1200, but the red in particular is to vent it the entire time you're firing it. In fact, the other recommendation for red is you fire it by itself, just so you can vent the whole kiln, and the mediums burning out of the other colors don't affect the red. I can tell you around here, we haven't done that, and we can usually get the red to look pretty decent as long as we, in one firing, as long as we kind of, again, remember to keep it the lid cracked, right, and vent it a little bit. Or if you have peepholes in your kiln, you can just unplug the peepholes. That's another way of venting your kiln. But what's nice about these glass line ones is, am I getting the name?
Yeah, color line.
Color line.
It's okay. That's why I'm here, is really just to correct him when he gets things mixed up.
There's too many lines. The glass line, color line is too confusing for someone like me. But you also can buy these tips like this, which are really nice. So they come in a pack of 3. And it's a really, really fine tip if you just want to get some really thin drawing in there. I'm not going to do it. I don't want to contaminate that brand new one. But it's a great way if you're trying to control a little bit more what you're trying to do. And then the other ones are the Milton Bridge ones. So Milton Bridge is, these come from the UK, right, United Kingdom. And they're manufactured, again, no lead in any of them. We sell them in smaller containers like these you see up here. All the colors are, which I think is great because of cost-wise.
Yeah.
You know, if you're just playing around and experimenting, I mean, you get a bunch of different colors without a big investment, right? Because you're just getting these small containers. We do sell the black though in the larger one because a lot of times people, use black for outlining or writing letters.
Yeah, the black and the white.
Yeah, and come to the white desk. Thank goodness, it's a good thing I brought you here, right? To make sure I do that right. And the Milton Bridge, same deal as all the other ones, right? You might even see on this one where it's really liquidy here at the top. Again, it's because the pigment settles and you just have to shake them up. The real nice advantage to Milton Bridge too is we can just add water to it to reconstitute it if it gets a little too thick.
And these do also have specific tips
good.
too. I have a little, wow, it's like the world's smallest thing. But there's these kind of like A-shaped tips here. Now what I found is that the Milton tips also do actually fit on the glass line. So I have two examples here. These are the glass line specific tips, but the Milton ones do also fit on this, but not vice versa. So you have to still buy the specific brand. But again, it comes in like a fine, medium, and a bold, so you can really control, especially if you're doing like fine detailing, like what he has here on the branches, or like wording, lettering, all of that. It's great to use a tip. But you can also just use it straight from the bottle, or even we use other things as well, like paintbrushes.
Yeah, any of them can be used, and almost all of them too can be intermixed. So if you're trying to make your own color, I mean, to me, I think that's also a great thing, right? If you don't want to buy like 15 jars of color, you can buy a few and mix them out. Again, the reds are a little picky on all of the ones, so you have to be a little careful with those. You'll have to experiment and try them out. But I think we add white to a lot of stuff to tone down colors, right? Or if you want looking for a particular shade of blue and you want to add a little green to it. I mean, that's pretty much true of any of the brands that they are.
Yeah, I almost always do like custom mixing, which usually, I'll just have like a separate glass container and I'll mix it up in there and then I can apply it. But just remember, a little goes a long way because once you have it mixed, you could save it in like a separate bottle. I think we do sell like separate little
we did.
bottles. Which is nice, right? Because if you make a shade that you might use repetitively in a lot of things, or you simply just like it, you could save it in a bottle, and then it might dry up a little bit. But as we mentioned, you can reconstitute it appropriately, whether that's with water or especially thinner. So.
And it doesn't take long to reconstitute them, right? Would you agree?
Yeah, a few seconds. Yeah, just add a little bit. Again, a little bit of whether it's a thinner or water, and then shake it up thoroughly. And then you can always add more. It's hard to kind of take away some. So.
Yeah, but that. So I know one time, did we get some questions? People asking us about that in particular, like.
So they asked about storage in the long term. Was the main question.
Yeah, so I can tell you for here at Delphi, I mean, we're just storing stuff in plastic tubs, and if you could see the tubs, you would. The bottles are all over the place, so it's not like one of those situations where they always have to be up or they have to be stored, like horizontal. I mean, I don't know, maybe there's a certain way, but we just throw them in the tub. But we haven't really noticed any issues, right?
No, I mean they're all inside like temperature controlled environments, so I think for the most part they're pretty flexible with their storage as long as you got the caps on them. I don't really see.
I think that's probably the big thing, the caps, right? I mean, make sure you got the caps on tight, and you'll see when we talk about the glass lines too that's important to not lose the little cap that comes with it, right? What else? So I talked about those, the Milton Bridge ones. I think that was all right.
Oh, and something really quick about the Milton is I definitely find that those are like the glossiest, I would say. I've had a lot of customers come to me, and specifically like for lettering, they really want something with like a high finish, high satin shine finish, and the Milton definitely is a little more glossy compared to say like a glass line or something. So, but you could always, put different brands like on the same project. You could always fire with one brand, and then maybe if you had specific detailing, you could do that with another too, and multiple firings.
Yeah, that is true, right? Especially if you're trying to look at, because not all of them have exact same palette. I mean, they have green or light green, but again, it's different than maybe the green that's in the color line or the what's in the Milton Bridge. That made me think of something else about just told you. Sorry.
It's okay.
It's it was about mixing.
Different brands.
That was it.
It will come in like 5 minutes and you're just
Yeah, after when we're done. So, the so then let's talk a little bit more. Oh, I know exactly what I was going to say. Was the point that you made again? So I mentioned it real early on that two of these, the Color Line and the Milton Bridge, are enamels, and what enamels are is a glass base, right? So basically ground up glass and then ground up pigment, and then that's what it is. So that's why they have a tendency to be shinier. Is because of that reason. And then, as I mentioned, the glass line is more of what you might see as a glaze, which my understanding does contain some glass, but probably not such as high as a percentage. I think that's the difference, right, between the shininess. Anyways, I don't think it really matters with the firing temperatures, because all of these three that we're showing you are very similar. The firing temperatures are really pretty close. So, and again, sometimes we always. I teach a bunch of fusion classes here, and when I'm talking to people about temperatures in particular, a lot of it is, it's particular to your kiln, right, or the kiln that you have access to. So, we're giving you guys temperatures vaguely as we kind of throw them out. They are on our website, though. If you're looking at the product right on our website, it'll tell you there's always a nice little PDF, I think, that tells you how to work with the material a little bit more. But on there, it gives you a temperature range, because again, it's not like a specific temperature. And as we've said now probably 5 or 6 times, the higher you go, the shinier it is. But but you're not going to know until you try in your kiln. That's sort of my point, right? So even though I'm saying, do this one at 1450, I mean, until you try it, you might not like the result, right? So it doesn't hurt to experiment, right? Take some scrap pieces of glass and some of the colors you want to play around with and fire them. See what they do. Especially if you're mixing paints, you want to mix it, maybe fire it and see what kind of, color you're getting.
Yeah, the nice thing about a lot of the bottles, at least for glass line, is they'll show you what the cured color is, like on the side. Let me grab. Like this one, it will show you the orange color. Yeah, it will show you the fire color on the side. However, Roy just made a great point. If you're custom mixing something, sometimes the wet version of the mix might not always be totally accurate as to what it might look like fired. So it would be a great idea to make little samples. I mean, you can get a pretty accurate idea of what something will look like when it's wet, but still it can always look a little different. So, yeah.
Right. Good. All right. So we're talking about the glass line a little bit more, right? So we have a few pieces laying around here on the table. I think most of these are glass line. I'm gonna get it wrong now.
Yeah.
And then this is one I think Willow's working on, isn't she? So Willow's another employee here at Delphi, and then she. Working on this really nice, this table's a little loose, polar bear. But this is not fire, this is just her working on it. So one of the things I wanted to show you is that, especially if you're looking at I think they're like Christmas lights that are up here, they're really light and faded because they dried. That's the only reason why, right? So sometimes I know people are like, that's not the color I thought it was going to be. But once you fire this, it's going to be the nice bright colors that you see.
Yeah. Same thing with the black, right? I mean, the black looks gray, but then you can see on this other example, it will turn like a nice stark black.
Yeah, it's real black, right? Because you haven't fired.
Yeah, not the wording on the bottom. The wording
on the bottom.
So that looks gray, right? But it will come out like a nice stark.
That's a good point too, right? So you can always refire into these. So if you let's say you paint on it and maybe you painted. What wasn't real clean, and you covered something that you meant to be another color, right? A lot of times you fire on. It's one of the slight complaints I hear sometimes that the colors they're certainly more opaque than they are transparent.
I would agree with
that. Would you agree?
Yeah.
You can water the ones that you can water down. In fact, any of them you can water down. Again, the color line you have to use a special thinner, but you can thin them down so they become more translucent. I don't know if they actually get transparent. I wouldn't really put it in that category, but they certainly allow more light coming through. The thinner they are, they're more like watercolors or something.
Yeah, I would actually compare all of the raw paints to an acrylic paint, and pretty similar to even watering them down if you've ever used those. That's kind of how I would compare these in terms of layering and watering them down, and their application style is fairly similar to an acrylic paint. But yeah, some of these I have done multiple firings on, like the panda here. I helped someone touch up this piece, so we had to. Sometimes what can happen with these paints is they can crack. So you'll notice particularly here in the ears, might be hard to see, but there is a little bit of cracking. So what you can always do is just, paint over it, let that dry, and then refire it, and it will fill in the crack. Now it's a little hard if you custom mix a color, but again, it's pretty simple. In this case, you just had black. But I've had a lot of projects where I will do multiple firings, or I'm trying to get a sort of depth effect. So I'll paint on like the back of the glass and the front, I might fire that. And then like with my top clear piece, I might fire on the back of that, but then flip it over. So it kind of gives that project a lot of depth. And I mean, I think I've done some of them around like 4 firings, and it holds up, especially if someone's doing like outlining. I believe on this piece here, these little flowers I did, I fired the actual, the yellow and green first. Then I went back over with the black. And a great reasoning behind that would be, if my black spilled over somewhere and I needed to scrape it away, now that my bottom layer, the yellow and the green is permanent, I can totally just alter the black as many times as I need to get it perfect, and then I can fire it. Whereas sometimes if you do it all when it's wet, if you might risk messing up another color or area if you don't break it up like that. But you can totally still do a project all in like one ground layer, so to speak.
Yeah, the nice thing is you're not really committed until you fire it, right?
Yeah,
so
that's true.
Even when it's wet and then you let it dry, I mean, we go in often with X-Acto knives or little tools and scrape away if you're trying to clean up edges. So even if your hand's not super steady and you get a little wavier line than you like, you can always come back in and
yeah, I believe that's how I did this shamrock. So a lot of the line work I was able to use like their ultra fine tip for, but particularly the lines around the edges, I just kind of, for efficiency, I would just do the lines as straight as I could, but went all the way around. And then they weren't quite as thin or as perfect as I would have liked, so I let them completely dry. And then I took, like an X-Acto knife, which we sell, called like a craft knife. Or sometimes I have like a little flat screwdriver I'll use to go back in and scrape away all the excess. Now just be careful with that, right? Take away a little bit, because sometimes you can kind of lift up the whole color and it might come off as like a chunk. But for the most part, you can be pretty exact and get fairly thin lines. So
I didn't know that's how you did that. I was impressed by how thin those lines were. I was like, wow, she was like really good.
yeah, so if you're trying to stump
Now
someone.
you cheated.
Yeah, I did cheat for the most part. But yeah, I mean, you can see I got some even
Those
like
are really,
curving
yeah,
lines.
I don't know how well that shows up on the camera, but it's really thin,
Really thin.
really thin lines, so very nice. So the cracking, the cracking, I think it comes from applying too thickly, which I know is, I think everyone's problem working with the glass line paints in particular. It's easy to apply them thick. And in fact, I used to really worry about it, and I used to try to always go real thin, but then, after a while, I was like, if it cracks, as Isabel pointed out, I just go back in and fill in the cracks with some of more of the same paint and then refire it, and you don't really notice them, so.
Well, and a couple things, I will say I do notice the white, for some reason, has a tendency to crack a little more than other colors. But I will say a few things. Is one, if the glass line in particular we're talking about looks cracked before you fire it, but when it's dry, then you know it's going to stay that way in the kiln. So that would be a nice opportunity to touch anything up before you fire it completely. So sometimes what I'll actually do is, again, take like a small flat screwdriver and I'll kind of scrape away a little bit of the top layer to kind of use that dust to like almost fill in the crack. It's a very like weird thing, but it works for the most part. Or you could, with like a paintbrush, take a little bit of that whatever paint and then go in and again fill in the crack. The only issue with that is you can't go over it a million times, because you might at some point reconstitute the dry paint beneath it, and you would end up picking it up more than you are putting down paint. So you do have to be cautious of that, but I kind of look at things when they're fully dry, and then I can say like, okay, well, would I like this when it's fired? Because a lot of times those cracks are just gonna further split, or they kind of show their true colors, if you will, before they fire.
So you're kind of working on a piece here, right?
Yes,
you want to
allegedly,
tell us a little bit about this? Or?
So what I did here, and what I do a lot of times with glass line, is first I'll find a pattern. I found this online. And then I'll print it out, or sometimes I can trace over like a digital thing like an iPad or something. And then I like to take a transparent glass. As you can see, a lot of times we use clear. That's pretty easy. But you can use like a colored glass. In this case, I can see through this glass for the most part, but you could use a light pad as well. And then I'll just place my glass over the pattern, and just right from there, I'll start tracing it. A lot of times for things I do also, I think you can even see it on Willow's here, you can use like a black Sharpie. So she actually has kind of like an outline. I think if I can
Show them
flip
that.
this over, yeah, you
Oh,
can
yeah.
see where she kind of sketched out the polar bear with black Sharpie, and then, but be careful, it can only be black, but it will burn off in the kiln too, and you won't see it anymore with the glass line
Yeah, that's
over
a
it.
great-
So you could also just sketch something. I've had people in like my painting with glass line class who they'll just sketch something out entirely on the glass, like they don't even have paper or anything, and then you can just go ahead and draw right over that. Or you could do it on a paper too. So there's a couple different advantages
Oh,
or
yeah.
disadvantages.
That's right. So
to
yeah,
that.
Isabel does teach a class on that. So if you guys ever want to come to Lansing, Michigan, and take a great class from Isabel about working specifically with the glass line paints, it's a pretty fun class, right? Not too long, not too
Yeah,
long.
it's about 3 hours. Yeah, and you get to make 2 pieces in the class, so it's
Wow.
fun. Also to just try it out. I know a lot of times people who use these paints maybe have already done fusing or maybe stained glass before, but they kind of want to, elevate their pieces, step them up in little ways. I mean, even I've seen like on stained glass where people like signing their work or
Oh, yeah,
adding eyes on something like like
Yeah.
that's pretty hard to do. So this is a way where you can kind of incorporate that too.
Yeah, that's why I like this piece here by Daisy that works here at Delphi, right? So you can see it's a stained glass piece, but she, painted all of those
there's like
different designs
these
with,
on here and then that.
and that was glass line, right? So
glass line.
So what a great way of incorporating. So not just for fusers, I guess, is what that whole story is all about.
Yeah.
Were you gonna paint something, or are you gonna show us how you paint, or
Oh
that was too much,
yes,
so.
totally.
So again, I see you're using all the nice tips, right? So when you're really trying to control, I guess that's how the paint comes out. Using these little tips are pretty nice, and you have a paintbrush with a
Yeah, really
little
small
tiny
paintbrush. Yeah, so actually, I quite often either use tips or a paintbrush. I'd say it's pretty 50-50. In this scenario, there's like a little dragonfly on the pattern that I still have to do. So in this case, I mix like a custom color green. So something when it comes to using the paints with a paintbrush is almost always people add too much pressure with the paintbrush. So if you, come down and touch the paintbrush to the glass and then drag that, you're kind of more so just spreading the paint across there, and you're more so picking up anything than you are putting it down.
You want to do it on this little piece? Could you show me what that looks like?
Yeah.
I don't know how well.
So if I don't really know how well it would touch it up, but if I come in here and then I push it down, like you can see in the beginning it might start off, quite thick, but as you keep going, you're kind of just dragging and thinning out the paint. So that's what I would not really recommend to do unless you're trying to get some sort of gradient effect. So
If you get some kind of really painterly look, sort of, I guess, if you wanted that.
yeah, but for this frog, I'm just kind of was trying to almost flood the area, but instead of using a tip, I used a paintbrush. So in that scenario, what I would want to do is gather paint on the tip of my brush, and then rather than dragging it, I like to kind of almost deposit some paint onto the area, and then I will kind of float my brush above that, and then I will just kind of drag the color to wherever I need to go. So like in this scenario, if I wanted to create a little circle, now you can see that entire circle is quite concentrated. So again, however you essentially view it here is how it's going to fire. So if you notice there are thin areas that let more light in and you wanted it to be more opaque, then that means you need to add more enamel to it.
Yeah, in the enameling world, they call it puddling, or you use the word flooding, right? So that's another great way of putting it. So instead, it's more, as she's talking about, placing paint as opposed to kind of brushing, like with this kind of motion. But
Yeah.
cool. Nice.
Oh yes. let me
She's
actually do it. I'm just
talking.
talking. Yeah. Ooh, this piece will be for sale.
No, that's going to be on your Etsy site later, right?
Okay. Yeah. Don't you have somewhere else to be?
That's nice.
And I mean, you can see this is pretty small. Well,
I
you
know,
probably can't see because it's so small, but I can get like pretty particular things just depending on my brush and my patience, I like to say. You can be fairly accurate with whatever you're doing. And again, sometimes I do edit things when wet, but most of the time I'll just do them while they're as they dry. And then sometimes when it comes to using multiple colors, like this frog does have some details on it, I will prefer to wait till everything is completely dry, and then I notice I have a better time layering the colors over there. Because sometimes if what's beneath it is pretty wet, it will kind of almost swirl the colors together if you apply them like both wet at the same time.
Yeah, show them what this one looks like. So you painted some of this earlier today, and so you can
Okay.
see the parts that are drying.
Yeah, so the middle part here, you can see where the green is all still wet, but the edges are now all dry. So I could go in and start like touching this white line up here. You can see it's not very crisp, so I might go in and edit that, scraping away little by little to clean up the lines.
You also notice the dragonfly she just painted. I mean, it's not like it's dripping off or running on the glass, right?
Yeah,
so
that's a good
the
point.
paints stick pretty well. I think all of them
Yeah.
do, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so then sometimes I just like to come in and like touch up the piece. So this frog, like there's like a little white
see
part
that.
there. So I'll just come edit it. I kind of like to go in like a back and forth motion and then work into the paint area that I'm trying to remove. But that's just what I found. And then you just want to be careful. Like a lot of times I'll blow the dust away. But again, I still kind of have some wet parts here. So I want to be careful. I'm not blowing it into the wet areas. Yeah. So you do have to be cautious.
And we talked earlier about might not be a great idea to speed the drying, right? I mean, it might not be a good idea to come at it with like a hair dryer.
Sometimes I find that
or
can
heat
actually
gun.
cause more cracking
Yeah, that's
because
what I've noticed. too.
the medium evaporates out of it unevenly. So I find it can kind of like separate or
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think I had that happen too. I was doing a piece once when I was trying. I thought it would help me out if I could get them to dry faster, and it didn't really help me out. I cracked a lot of the paint that way, but so I guess you just gotta wait, right? So
have patience, right? And that's it.
so yep. And then I'm working on a piece here. This is something a little different that I was doing. I had done this piece. I don't know which I know why I do that. I'm there. Here,
Okay, sure.
whatever.
Sorry.
Wherever the camera is, we got like 14
Yes.
cameras in here. Okay, so I did this piece a while ago, and I was really more an experiment than anything else, because I had read about this or heard about it, and I was like, oh, I'm going to try it. So this piece I had done by painting onto the fiber paper. So not on the glass, but on the fiber paper. And then I took 2 layers of clear and just put it down on top of the fiber paper, and then when I fused it, that fused the glass line paint into the back of the glass. So pluses and minuses doing this technique. One sort of minus is on this one, but I don't know, you might find it interesting. I did trap a lot of air bubbles. You can see these kind of long, elongated air bubbles that are up along like where the branch part is. And that's from the paint, which I found really hard to believe that was going to occur, but that's what happened. So if you don't want that, then you can either start with a 1/4 inch piece of glass, or you could fuse your 2 layers of glass first, and then put them on top of your paper. But I have this, this again is just a piece of thin fire, bullseye thin fire, and you can see I just used a pencil because that's not gonna fire into the glass at all. And I just kind of did this quick little sketch, and then I started painting on there. So I was gonna do just a little bit more, just so you guys can kind of see how I approach this. And as Isabel pointed out earlier to me, was that it is kind of irregular as far as the thickness goes. So some areas are really nice and thick. I usually let this whole thing dry. I mean, it's up to you. You could just put the glass right on top of it while it's wet. That tends to kind of smear out your lines if they're wet, especially if you have some that are really higher up. And then come in and fire it. But usually I just kind of let it dry a bit. I know it does sort of warp the paper slightly because it is wet, right? But again, we're firing on top of it. It's really not going to make much of a difference. I typically have a tendency to go to the little bit higher temperature. When I'm fusing in this situation, I mean, around here we usually do like full fuses around 1450. So I fire these at like 1475, so about 25 degrees hotter. The thinking, anyways, for me is that since this is sitting on the shelf, the shelf is a great insulator, and so it doesn't really allow the heat to get to the back of the glass so well. So I just bump up the temperature a little bit. I have some brown. Let me show you how the one reason why this whole table just moved. Sorry, because we gotta lock the wheels. It's nice to have. You'll notice that Isabel had the same thing too. It's good to have like a little scrap piece of glass as a palette, right? Just so you can get a feel for how this is going to come out, right? So I always like to squirt a little bit out first to see how much is coming out. Then I can come in and squirt and control a little bit more. And again, for me, I'm not really following my line so much as I'm just kind of using that as a guide about what I'm doing. And so I'm trying to intentionally get something that looks a little more expressive and more branch-like.
You are so expressive. Wow. Yes, I feel moved by
But
this piece.
is that sarcasm?
Oh no, I'm just
Wow, where's
adding on to it.
Val?
I know he's like regretting asking now.
But if I want something a little more controlled, right, then I come in with this really fine tip, and you can see where I can put, like here I have a little branch coming off. Always test it out, like I said, first on a piece of glass so you can see what kind of line you're going to get, and that gets it flowing. And you can see I can get a much thinner line here,
Ooh, wow.
From what I get without the tip on there. So again, then these tips, I think you were saying, right, come in 3 different sizes or
They
3
do,
different holes,
yeah.
but they're so
Fine,
tiny.
medium, and bold.
They're like real.
Yeah, they're really precise. You can say.
And then I was going to try to do a flower real quick. I can kind of show you how I did the flower. Nothing too super exciting other than, I don't know what that was. Oh, yeah.
Would you like me to
I should have mixed this one before, right?
Yeah, but this is it's more real time.
Yeah, that's
you guys
it.
might experience
This
in your
is
home
super
studio.
exciting.
Yeah, right.
I know people always expect that from us. It's really super, always.
Thrilling.
Not boring.
Thrilling
Yeah.
life, yeah.
Lives.
It's right, we're just real.
Yeah, that's right.
So what would you say is like an advantage of using this method, like on the paper?
Well, I think one of the advantages on the paper is that, especially for those of you that probably have more of a drawing or painting background where you're used to working on traditional sort of materials, canvas or paper, you get more of a feel. I know for me personally, I can get a little more looser, right? And it's not, I always feel like when I'm going right on the glass, it's a little more controlled. These materials, they tend to slide on the glass more. So I feel like I don't have as much control. The drag on the paper is a little more, again, I'm more familiar with that, like especially if you're working with, even colored pencils or those types of things.
Yeah, that's right.
I should start using my left arm so I don't get one really big
It's
right
really
arm.
buff.
There
This
you
is
go.
my enamel shaking arm.
Nope.
So this is an example of one that was maybe watered down a little.
Yeah,
too
maybe
much.
one that's watered down a little too much.
Or
And so
sometimes
it's
they
a-
just
a
separate
challenge
more
to
than-
get reconstituted. Sorry, I should have done this beforehand. Wasn't sure what I was doing. Maybe we can listen to that.
Real life.
ASMR.
We're gonna see which one's the one.
Okay, this one's a better texture, I would say.
All right, this will work for me.
Also, another thing is sometimes these can get clogged. So I believe the tips, or if you buy like one of the sets of specifically the glass line, I know that they come with these little pins in there, and you can use these to not only unclog the actual bottle itself, but particularly the tips, because they're quite small. Nothing else really, fits in a hole like that. So usually, as soon as I'm done using them, I'll put them in a cup of water, warm water. Just kind of let them soak in there, and then I'll use the tip to unclog them and keep them clean and clear.
I think I have this one all out. So, and then I just, again, the flowers, I really didn't use any kind of always, I didn't follow my own. Oh, look at that.
Yeah, so I just put just kind of square it.
Nice, that's good.
And now it's in flow.
Excellent.
Should be.
Oh, yeah. Then I just put some in the middle. The last time, so this one tends to be a little wet, which I don't really mind actually, to be honest, because I was doing something, especially with this one here, where I was just using a toothpick, to be honest, and just kind of dragging through it and trying to get this more blended color instead of just having something just be so, this is pink and this is dark red, right? I'm trying to make it look a little more, I guess, flowery looking,
Yeah.
but you kind of get the idea.
Yeah.
There's lots of kind of fun ways of doing that.
Yeah, and again, when you're doing something like that, I feel like it might be beneficial to not like drag it on your surface below, and rather just kind of hover. And I mean, if you've ever seen those videos of like people flooding cookies, I think it's kind of similar to that. You want to just like drag on the surface, but you got some
I like
nice
cookies.
little design.
Did you bring any
Okay.
cookies with you?
After
Okay, all right. Dang, I thought she was bringing cookies. Yeah, I heard you talking about the tip. So I did want to talk about cleaning them because what happens. I can tell you what happens around here, and it's not. I'm sure it's not Isabel or me doing it. But sometimes people forget to clean the little tips, that they left on here, and so they'll just throw them. We have all of them in a jar, or we have a bunch of them that we just kind of keep stored in a jar, and then some of them are pretty dirty. So we just throw them in. You said like warm water definitely works better. These must not have been that dirty because I put these in earlier today just to set them in there and swirl them around. But a lot of times you'll see the color actually just start bleeding out, and that's not really happening with that. Not that super exciting. But as Isabel pointed out, just using a straight pen or something is a great way of getting in there. I actually a lot of times will just take like also the like the corner of a paper towel, and if you kind of wad it up. And then you can go in here and then twist it around.
Yeah, that's great for getting like that base part, and then for the tip itself, using like.
Yep, and then that gets out some of it. This one's pretty clean. I don't know how to do that, so I don't know. Do you have any other cleaning tips? I think that's probably about it.
No, that's it. I just it's better to put them in the water when they're wet though.
Oh man, that is definitely a whole lot easier.
I mean, just like paint brushes with regular paint, it's kind of harder when they dried out. So just right when you're done, or even sometimes in the middle of working. That's the beauty of having an ample amount of tips is as soon as I'm done with the color, even if I might go back to it, I'll just throw it in water and then I'll just swap to a new one later on, just to keep them from drying up. And because I think that's what actually happened for the ones in the cup. The reason you might not see it coming out is because they're so dry, so the water takes quite a long time to actually penetrate.
Sometimes you have to do it the night before, right? So you have to. Yeah, the other thing I know that's happened to me before too is I took a tip off and then I put that same tip on a different bottle and then used it and contaminated the color right as it came out. So I had whatever I was using was mixed more than I wanted it to be. But so just be careful, clean it up. I think that was it, right? I think we covered most of the stuff we wanted to talk about. So was it good? Noah said it was good, so then that means
that's all that matters.
I think Noah said great, so I guess, but what's Noah know?
Well, look, actually,
oh, that is weird.
That's cool.
Well, thanks for joining us today, and we'll be back in a few weeks. And I think we have a topic. I'm not sure.
We have a Q&A, so leave your questions.
Oh man,
drop
thanks
your
for saying something.
Anything and everything class related, just drop.
You bet. Yeah, we do these every now and then where we just kind of open it up for questions. And even if you can't watch us live, send us an email, right? So Facebook@delphiglass.com with your question, and then we'll answer it. Online. It's kind of fun. Sometimes I call it like a stump the presenters kind of a thing, right? See if you can ask us a question. I mean, we're not going to make up stuff, right? So if we don't know it, we'll be honest and let you know. Hey, it's not something we've done. It's something we've tried, but you'd be surprised. So we, with Val will be here, and so it's stained glass or fusing or mosaics, flame working, glass blowing. Any of those things, shoot us a question. But otherwise, we'll see you guys in a few weeks. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Bye.